I'm going to start. I was billed as reading fiction, but it seems a singular impiety for a poet to be reading fiction. But I will be reading the last 5 minutes of my one and only novel, accompanied by Karen McCormack. But a lot of my work here actually just promiscuously mingles prose and line ending, so it really doesn't matter either way. I'm going to start with a few short prose pieces from the Canterbury Tales, mercifully shorter than Chaucer. And this is the prologue. A less satisfactory characterization of continua really does make sense if it pits mind against magnitude, intellectually speaking, while holding back on each three-dimensional potential interchange. To the left of that southeast revelation is a growing stockpile of intuitions, if, and only if, a subset of transfinite cardinal numbers implies a closed consequence of coherences. Or then again, if the collocation of sets pertaining to the current White House protocols subtract to introduce the origami monogamy into the game plan for the interrogatory phase called, quote, who's that over there, unquote, or, quote, what have we here, unquote, a resultant and parallel pattern causes stridulation across the entire philanthropy of the infinite. For instance, any number of acceptable critical methods can be used to demonstrate that the asset plus class invariables for new card members can never be caught on streaming video, or that a wingnut is not a discursive practice, but still holds the potential ad infinitum to both mirror and corrupt a unique, incommunicable truth about a host of golden daffodils. Having said this, however, a post-mortem alliance of indeterminacy in the Middle Eastern buyback programs and hybrid disjunctive syntheses within the renationalization of oil markets via PowerPoint poetics could always corrupt the axiom choices available. In I have no complaint today, and I see no reason to assume a random arrangement of unexplored fingernails. But not so in you seem necessarily inconsistent this week, and I feel it illegal to correlate the inadmissibility effects with Jaina cartel possibilities. And only twice in, quote, does the actual event complete the punctual, or, quote, how was I to know that by establishing three unknown antinomies, I would shatter the limits of finite argumentation. But now is not the time to exchange intellectual inclusiveness for a mapping of hermeneutic distance or the consciousness of voluntary synopsis disarrangement, let alone the French kiss of pragmatism imposed upon an n-dimensional spherical neighborhood like ours. This ought to surprise no one, as we are all gathered here to hear the curfew toll the knell of parting day, and lowing herds wind slowly o'er the lea, as well as to read these words as a community of self-taught readers, knowing poetry, like pilgrimage, involves a search for significant time made possible by the fact of certain marks spaced equidistant to an origin that is indifferent to a knowledge of two extra surplus letters, catalytic in their own encounters, remembering a linnet is a bird not heard in words where the linnet is in it. The Knight's Tale. To the left, and in artesian-sprung rhythm, stands person A, looking at a photograph of Jorge Cantor in middle life. Both the photograph and person A are in possession of a bust of Wilhelm Stahl. But now, person A requests a meeting with the soul of the sculptor. That request is denied by the financial advisor in charge on the grounds that conversation with the spirit world would implicate the stable shaman coordinates between person A and person non-B, and might hemorrhage the vernacular in a way that would occasion the reproduction of forgotten separations. Walt Whitman from Wagner, the husband from the wife of Bath, vision from resonance, my own storification from its representativity, the spinster from her pocket guide to feminism. Person not B finds death a little disappointing. He feels he is the Shropshire lad completing his own version of the wasteland. In 1922, the problem was urgent. Relics of intuitions shattered stable market prices, a child leapt from a parapet and landed in rocket science before the rocket was invented. Now the desperation is more focused on the Meccano logos. Allegory is returning as enigma variations on a hiccup. The proposition that it's a book worth keeping actually mollifies the same soft-spoken personification known as Person Y, who writes under the pseudonym of boutique neoliberalism. Person A becomes appalled by the regeneration of historical memory in the lesser species, illustrated by an index embedding the grand collage: imagination, insignificance, intelligence. He dreams of the rebirth of the Frankfurt kindergarten, run by Sister Adorno of the local social outreach program, where he can read Walter Benjamin's Theory of the Typewriter and shout out the phrase, "If only yesterday had come." And come it did, right there beneath the disturbance of a distance-reaching touch. It is eternal transience, and each neighbour is a nightingale calling, "Oh, for a yesterday to come." And here's the wife of Bath's tale. "Hey, fart eyes, you got a total impecunity or what? Just get me out of this Slavophilic potboiler. That's quite a quasi-phenomenal habex legomenon stuck in your crotch. And don't critique my reference to the deeper crisis in representation and all that prosthetic modernism you pull out of the garbage for a lecture on early modern shit. Happily and politically, friends are not neighbours in these parts of my rectum, where nicotine odours comes by the gallon in convenient aerosol sprays, thanks to this do-it-yourself colonic irrigation kit. So much for the gasoline immersion savings plan. I'd leave it to the experts of the honeyed transmission in my region. The Miller's Tale, and this is dedicated to Joan Kopchak, some of us will know. Person A, a well-known architect, is afflicted by a terrible thought. Perhaps acts of envelopment will destroy the efficacy of his Cartesian coordinates. Perhaps a line, he thinks, is not a movement, but an empire. Not being subject in essay, perhaps we undergo processes and procedures of subjectivization. To say I, as I do, might only be a habit of converting non-self into self. So he decides he will be more himself by entering the formula for the production, containment, and description of a violent act. Having read in an ancient codex that the navel is the trace